dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life.
Hello, Matt.
Howdy, Rob. It's us. It's Dungeon Master of None.
It's Dungeon Master of None, and it's game mastery time. Time to master the game, to be a master of the game.
Specifically, the game we're talking about is Pathfinder, second edition.
Pathfinder.
AKA not Dungeons & Dragons.
That's right.
Only exactly like Dungeons & Dragons in every other way.
But don't you dare call it Dungeons & Dragons, and don't you expect to see a Beholder or a Rust Monster or any other
Illithid.
proprietary Illithid. You might see an Aboleth, though, because that's not proprietary, but they're called something else. They're called Algolothus or something. Anyway.
That's right. We love Pathfinder. We love their sales model, and we're really liking this game mastery guide. And last episode we talked about some of the basic dungeon master advice. In this episode, we're into the part of the guide that really gets into the nitty-gritty of running all parts of the game.
If you are really looking for just a nuts and bolts, here's the pieces that you need to put together to build a campaign at any level, this Game Mastery Guide has it. It is not the most detailed. Well, actually, that's not true. I shouldn't say that. This might be the most detailed single book I have ever read on Game Mastery. There are other things I have read, other videos I have watched, perhaps, and we have gotten more granular on certain things. But this covers it all, from top to bottom, bottom to top, everything in between. If you follow the list, the instructions, the things contained in this Game Master Guide, you will absolutely have everything that you need to run a game.
The one thing it's missing, the one thing that I think would really put it over the top, that would also be anathema to Pathfinder fans, I think. It's a basic adventure. It's like an adventure included in the Game Mastery Guide that puts all of the things in practice. Obviously, there's like a million free Pathfinder adventures out there, so if you're already playing Pathfinder, why would you include this in your Game Mastery Guide if you're buying this, for your variant rules and stuff? But
I agree. Yeah, I know why they didn't include it, because there are a million very good Pathfinder adventures, but I think a demonstration of putting it all together, I agree with Matt, would be really good. But that's okay. That's basically the only thing that is missing. As I was reading this, I was getting excited, because I'm like, look at all these things. It was really helping me put everything into place. I don't, I'm not actually like working on a campaign at the moment, but it really got my gears a turning. Like this really, in terms of ideation, really worked for me. So what have we got here, Matt?
all right, so if you're following along, if you own it already, we're on page 36 here. It's talking about campaign structure.
Yes. Now, we've talked about this before, but I really like how they lay this out. I think this is a great way to think about how you're approaching your campaign. They've got, now I think this is actually kind of limited, but 4 basic structures, right? The one shot, which is exactly what it sounds like, one adventure, a brief campaign, which is, according to them, 2 adventures. Disagree with the, extended campaign, which they're calling 5 adventures, and then an epic campaign, which they're calling 6 long adventures, and they've got time frames and appropriate levels to go with that. I don't agree with any of the numbers they've attached to these structures, but I agree with the division of campaigns into basically one shot, brief, extended, and epic, right? I would, I guess, given how long it takes my groups to get through anything, I can't imagine accomplishing much of anything of note in the adventure timeframes provided, but otherwise I like chunking your adventures into this form.
Yeah, I would also be super impressed with myself if I could go level 1 through 20 in 1 to 1.5 years weekly, but I mean, I feel like some people can, right? This is with perfect play, right? If you have the chess engine working on the side of your campaign players, there's no
in
errors.
Our Pathfinder, now I wasn't like, actually, no, this is a lie. I not only did I rapidly advance levels, but I bent a lot of rules. But in our Pathfinder campaign, which I think only got to 16th level, it took us 3.5 years to get there. I think that was the entire length of the campaign. Now I guess we could have been more diligent, but I'm pretty sure that was running weekly or close to weekly that entire time. So this, again, maybe if you are a nose to the grindstone, real lunch pail GM, here's a dungeon, get to it, suckers, then maybe you can go through this. But sorry, I told you this is not like relevant at all. I just got completely sidetracked thinking about like how long it would take me to get through these adventures. Anyway, what else is in the campaign structure section?
There's a bunch of useful advice about basics like rewards, experience points, treasures, player motivation, or player goals, and how you want to contrast those with NPC or villain goals, how power level impacts the world. Some great overall advice for structuring your campaign. Not, again, if there's a critique here, there's not like an example campaign of how this works, or 2 or 3 things of like, you can do it this way, or this way in practice, right?
Mm-hmm. Where it does get a bit more detailed, and where I appreciate the focus is on the next section, adventure design, where
let's talk about that.
Where it delves into the we've got your individual sessions, which make up an adventure, which make up a campaign. And this section is a lot more detailed. It talks about player motivations, theme and feeling, and I love what they've got here. They've got a bunch of adventure recipes, and I think this is delightful. I would not take any of these as written, but they are great for thinking about what kind of game you want to play. There's just a broad genres, motifs.
Here's an example. A high adventure of 6 to 8 sessions includes 2 long voyages, punctuated by combat, a trap dungeon, a tournament, combat encounters, 16 moderate, 8 severe, avoid low or trivial threat battles, role-playing encounters, 2 battles of wits, 4 conversations with bizarre features, encounter tropes, unique environments and terrain, swinging from balconies, etc., etc. So it does this for, dungeon crawls, intrigue, horror, military, romantic adventures. It's nice.
And I love this. Again, I wouldn't take this exactly as written, but I love having a framework to think about. Like when I've put together all my campaign materials and I'm trying to plan out the next few sessions, I can be like, okay, why don't I throw together roughly what it suggests for these encounters, include the, some role-playing encounters, some exploration, etc. It's nice. It's nice to have a little framework, even if, so you're not just building everything from scratch. I really appreciate this just as a sort of guideline, even if I might not use it exactly.
There's like 2 other useful ways to use these is to, one, if you write your own adventure, like, did I actually write the style that I promised to set out with? Yes. Or what style is this adventure? Exactly. My players asked for a dungeon crawl. Look at your stuff and say, okay, did I write that? Which of these does this fit in? You could also just kind of use it to kind of check your work, right? Did I leave anything out?
Yes.
Right? Like, obviously, nothing has to have all of these things. But if you're like, I really want to do an intrigue campaign, looking at the intrigue stuff, I should have a political or a courtroom scene, a cryptic source. I don't have any cryptic sources. Let me add that in.
And you can be like, maybe I should write a couple more role-playing encounters. That it looks like I'm a little thin on that. Or if like the high adventure that Matt read out, like if you look at all your encounters and you're like, these are a bunch of mooks. I really need some epic level combats. I should probably revisit my baddies. I really like this. I think this is really great. I appreciate the modular approach to adventure and campaign design. I like to be a little bit more freeform, but I also appreciate having, I don't know, increasingly, I appreciate having structure, and, I can provide some of that for myself, but this is just a great touchstone for thinking about how you're putting your adventures together. This is a really useful resource, in my opinion. One of the best in the book.
Yeah, I really liked it. I also like they've organized the other things you need to think about into threats, motivations, arcs, and then kind of a little bit on mechanics that you might want to add.
What I really liked about threats is, again, these are very broad and you'd want to change them, but they're big ideas like corruption, devastation, extremism, mayhem, subjugation, and it has foes that might perpetuate these threats. So corruption is Al-Golothu, fiends and undead. Extremism is cultists, revolutionaries. Mayhem is just, beasts, dinosaurs, drakes, monsters, giants. This is great. This is, again, thinking about just putting some guide rails on your campaign. This section is really, or this whole chapter is very, very useful.
There's also some questions for getting the motivation to whatever that opposition or threat you've written out down, right? What does the opposition want? Who or what does the opposition's fear? And it shouldn't be the PCs because, they probably don't know who they are, right? Why is the opposition sure to succeed, right? If the PCs don't do anything, what makes them unstoppable? What are their weaknesses? How can they be tricked? What's something they might ignore?
These are great questions. This is the thing that this book does really well, is it just gives you either bullet points to think about or questions to ask yourself. It's really easy to follow. Speaking of, the next section is maybe my favorite in the whole book, and it's the one on an encounter design. And if there's one thing the Pathfinder guys know, it's designing encounters. They really, really have that down. And there's a lot in here, but just like in adventure and campaign design, it starts with a list, and I appreciate that the thing that they start with is variety, right? How to vary your encounters, because I think all of us have experienced, whether we like it or not, some tedious, repetitive encounters. Matt and I have talked a bunch about how in a lot of the pre-written adventures, especially the low-level ones, there's a bunch of very samey encounters. You fight a lot of groups of goblins or a lot of groups of the same enemy over and over again. And this is a great resource for thinking about how to vary those up. And there's, let's see, 6 different things to think about. I love this. Theme, right? Types of creatures and locations. Difficulty, like how hard the fight is. Complexity, encounter composition, types of monsters, monster level. Setup, whether you're surprised or if the PCs get the drop, if there's conversation or a formal duel, and then information, how much your players know, and using these different things to think about how to make your encounters different and interesting.
To use an example, let's say you're running your first campaign and it's Lost Mine of Phandelver, right? You go to the first cave and there's 5 groups of 3 to 8 goblins.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
5 different encounters. Okay, even if you didn't want to rewrite those to be different sets of creatures, if you take the setup variety and you're like, okay, I don't have the time to find new stat blocks, you can just say, okay, the setup of each one of those is going to be different. In one, the goblins are completely distracted. They're playing goblin poker.
Goblin dice.
Yeah. In another, they're set up for an ambush, right? In another, they're having an argument. In another, they're like practicing speaking common and they want to talk to the players, right? Just
in
that
another,
variety.
they're fighting another monster that also wants to fight the players, right? It's a 3-way combat. Yeah, that's an easy way to vary things up. Yeah, exactly what I was thinking of Phandelver. If you don't want to rewrite stat blocks or create a goblin lieutenant, you can just vary the setup, and each one of these things can be a great tool for making your encounters a little bit more diverse.
There's some great like overall framing things about, okay, what's the weather like, what's the terrain, A lot of the stuff in the Game Mastery Guide assumes that we're using Pathfinder 2nd Edition's, at least to me, a little more logical XP budgeting system for building an encounter as opposed to the CR of 5e.
I actually was... There's a little box on page 48, which is just quick adventure groups. And it's an XP budget, and it's just examples of encounters you might have, a boss and lackeys, one creature of party level plus 2 higher than the party, and then a bunch of 4 creatures that are 4 levels lower than the party. Things like 6 creatures of the party level -4, a mook squad. This is great. And when I ran a Pathfinder 2e campaign before the pandemic, I used this all the time. This was so useful. And brief digression, I feel like Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a game designed to go easier on GMs, because it was just so much easier to put together encounters, to run encounters, and to make sure that they were the appropriate challenge and level for the party. Everything just sort of like worked out really well, and it was just really nice to have these packages to either use as a framework or to check my work, like Matt said earlier. I love this. This is so great, so useful. It is just such a delight to read as a game master.
Yeah, and then they go into, just some ways you can really, really mix it up, adding in hazards we'll get into later, making a battlefield that
changes,
moves, and
evolves,
changes, thinking about time and time pressure, thinking about encounters that take place in multiple locations. This is always fun, whether you have like a teleporter sending people back and forth between a room, or basically just 2 things going on at once can make something that might be very boring very, very exciting.
Secondary objectives is a great one.
Secondary objectives, yes.
You're Jackie Chan in Rush Hour, and you're trying to protect the priceless Ming vase while fighting the mooks. You've got other things to worry about. Well, it's not just you beat up the bad guys. You have to rescue the princess or stop the gigantic machine from
turning on,
or any number of other things. These are
small fire
things.
From spreading.
From spreading. Yes, that's a classic one.
Listen, if you want to make an interesting encounter, right, don't make it about killing the creatures that are in the room, right? Make it about doing something in which creatures are preventing you from doing that thing.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of great suggestions in here for varying your encounters, and I think it's terrific. There's all really good ideas.
And of course, just some advice that, we've heard all the time, like, you can build a group of enemies that work well together with their stats and abilities. Bring your villains back for more memorable encounters.
Yes.
The next section is my absolute favorite because the Advanced Dungeon Master's Guide that we talked about has some advice on this, but 5e does not. I don't think the 3rd edition Dungeon Master's Guide had too much advice about this either, or the 4th edition at all, and it's drawing maps. Now, if you've played D&D for 40 years, maybe you know how to do this without thinking about it. But if you've never drawn a map before and you don't know how to, for example, make a map key, right? What do the symbols on my map mean? How can I efficiently record all the information that I need to reference for later on without, just covering my map with text, right? This is how to draw a map. Create a legend, number your areas, add some definitions, sketch, avoid repetition, avoid perfect symmetry unless there's a good reason for it. It even tells you, hey, get some graph paper and some soft pencils.
It's a great section. It is 2 pages, which is all you need, but it's 1 page of really good advice and a example hand-drawn map. It's perfect. It really is nice to have this example, and I do wish that 5th edition had it, because it is, whether or not it likes it, a very map-based game. And yeah, this is a terrific section.
It just, shows you should put lots of cool stuff in your rooms, like make them pretty dense for the most part. I think one of the easiest, okay, I've never pulled out the graph paper myself. I always just steal maps from online or something for my games at home.
Oh yeah.
Is really this advice about symmetry, right? About just kind of making everything the same while it may look like aesthetically appealing to you in when you're looking at the map of the building. Everything's laid out like logically. First off, very few buildings are laid out logically. Modern buildings, ancient buildings, medieval buildings, there's a logic to them, but it's not one that appeals to someone looking from a bird's eye view on them. And when your players play in something that is symmetrical or every room is similar, it gets really boring.
This is a major pitfall I have when drawing maps. Again, I mostly use computer tools. I'm not a great cartographer. I try to draw them myself when I can't find what I'm looking for. But this was great advice because, I tend to lean on symmetry because, I don't know, it's a building, right? It's the same. But Matt's absolutely right, and this book is absolutely right. It's boring, and a lot of buildings aren't like that. And, it's so much better to vary. One thing I would have liked, there's plenty of places you can find lots of like example maps. I would have liked more Pathfinder examples because I think that they really do know what they're doing when it comes to mapping, and I would have loved to have seen some more, but the one they have is good. And this is great.
This is where like the 4th edition DMG shines in that, well, it doesn't tell you how to fucking make a map on your own. There are like 8 pages of maps.
Yes, right? That was really good about the DMG is it had so many example maps. Yeah.
Okay, and now we're into maybe one of the bigger chapters of the book, and it's
now we're getting
tools.
real mechanical, nuts and bolts. The tools section.
And this is basically using the Pathfinder game rules, how to build or modify everything from creatures and traps to items and worlds, nations, settlements, planes, everything, right? How to build everything.
So the specifics of this are going to be very 2E focused. It's very mechanical, but there's a lot still, I think, to be gleaned from these sections. And I really want to talk about building creatures because I think
let's start here. It's fun.
Yeah, because
we love it. We love doing it.
We love to do it. It's also, I think, one of the things that the game wants more creatures. So that, your players will encounter many monsters, and the more unique ones and interesting ones that you can present them with, the better. I'm trying not to constantly rag on 5th edition all the time, but it does not make this easy. Pathfinder makes creature design, I don't want to say easy. It makes it very comprehensible. It makes it very like you have a clear path forward. 5th edition, as Matt just mentioned, the CR system is completely borked. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They don't have any templates. They don't have any like clear design guidelines. 2nd edition does, or Pathfinder 2nd edition does.
Yeah, and one of the great things is for every vital statistic of a monster, from its hit and damage, HP, saves, perception, you pick a level, and you know what level it should be from, like, for example, that little table. Is it easy, the same as the players? Is it higher than the players? Okay, you've picked the level, and then you basically just have to pick, okay, is this monster extreme, high, moderate, low, or terrible, right? Is it or something like that, right? Is it, where does it fit on these? And if you have one of the great things about the system is it works great from concept to reality, right? If you came up with, a concept for a monster from scratch on your own, and you can draw it and picture it in your mind, you can kind of go through this and give it stats.
Yeah, this is really easy to follow if you're like, let's think about some of our like monster mashup, right? If we wanted to give the shadow hedge, the blink hedge, a stat block, like we would know exactly like how to approach it, right? Like, roughly what level it is, what it's good at, what it's not good at, and then we could just go through the list of modifiers and say, this is low, this is high, this is extreme. And then we would, a few minutes later have a rough outline, and there'd be more to do, but you can, it's so, there's a great example on page 61 of improvising a creature, right? And I love this example because it describes, your players come across a kobold soldier, and you're like, I don't know, it's got moderate perception, and you write down whatever that is, and then it gets hit, and you look at the table, and you're like, it's got, high AC, and you write that down, and you can do this on the fly because these tables and the math in second edition works so well that it makes it really easy to put together. This is just a really terrific system, and I just.
Well, one of the things is for like basic creatures like this, they've sort of let themselves go back to kind of roots, right? If you've ever played first edition Dungeons and Dragons or something, you'll notice that many creatures are their entire stat block is explained in one sentence or a parenthetical, right? And you can do that in Pathfinder second edition. You can do it in any edition, really, but these tables making them up on the fly, that little simple, AC, HP, save, perception, strike, damage, right? You can get all that together.
And you could do this for 5th edition. It wouldn't work quite so well, but the absence of a list of tables like this is...
Well, what's really missing is the extreme high, moderate, low in all those tables. They often give a range, but there's the lack of the guideline in that range. It makes it just a little more difficult, right?
I also like that it has a list of, and this is because Pathfinder's magic items are much more prescribed, but it's, this is, if your creatures or NPC is this level, here's a safe item, or here's a list of safe items you can provide it that won't overpower the party or won't break the game. This is, that there's rules for getting more complicated, but it starts simple and gives you everything that you need to put together a basic monster. And then if you want to get more complicated, it tells you how to do that as well. I really like the section on designing abilities, because I think that it has a lot to say about just game design, but also like what is a good like ability, let's go with like monster ability. And there's a brief section that says, here's the basics of ability design: respect the action economy, make sure abilities are level appropriate, and avoid invisible abilities. And
there are 2 great points on like what some of those words mean. Like in Pathfinder, respecting the action economy means that like you kind of take what all the creature you can imagine it can do, narrow it to the smallest and most interesting set of things that it can do that make sense. Because again, creature's time in your game world, in your player's mind, is limited, right? It is either there for a scene and gone, or very likely killed, right? So respect that, and don't write yourself 20 abilities, even if it makes sense that this, daring duelist that the players might fight might have all those abilities.
I also really like this advice about invisible abilities.
Me too.
Don't give your monsters a passive bonus against, saves, or a bonus on their attacks that players can't see, right? Like if you're gonna write an ability that impacts their mechanical performance, make it obvious, make it visible. Don't just give them buffs. This, like, the inverse example would be like in 5th edition, a fighter's fighting style is technically invisible to the people that fighter is fighting against, and the bonus to their defense if they're a defender, or bonus to damage if they're an archer, that sort of thing. Don't give that to your monsters. That's
right. Yeah, that's a player
unfun.
thing, right? Especially if it's a thing where the monster like takes an action to do something where it's just very unclear what they're doing, right? They buffed their damage by focusing. Well, if you can't see that happening, if there's no way for players to interact with that ability, it's maybe not the best ability. In the same way, it's like you want to be really careful about always on abilities. You want to be really careful about abilities that don't take an action, right? These are the things where you gotta watch yourself.
Matt mentioned Pathfinder Brain last week, and there's a upside and a downside, and the downside is that it makes you like really worried about giving anything nice to your players because they'll abuse it. The upside is that it causes you to think about how the mechanics of a creature or an item or something might not be fun to play against, right? Or to play with. And I think that's a real benefit of this type of, it is largely mechanical, mechanistic thinking, but I think it's important to be thoughtful about that, because those things can also impact your enjoyment of the game.
Yeah, here's an example in practice, if this maybe feels a little too abstract for some of our listeners, is we recently looked at some of the Flea Mortals monsters when James was on our podcast by MCDM. And those are great, right? And they have a lot of like reaction type abilities and special abilities. And I think if you want to make monsters more interesting, adding things they can do to react to your players is a great way. However, right, it says, and this is great advice, so I'm just going to read it from the Game Mastery Guide. Reactions should require something out of the ordinary to happen, or should be relatively weak if triggered by something ordinary. A reaction that triggers anytime someone tries to hit a creature is likely to be perceived by the players as uninteresting because it's so predictable. The best reactions should be telegraphed so that when they happen, they make sense to the players.
Which is great advice. And yeah, there's nothing more unpleasant than a monster that reacts powerfully and shuts down one type of attack or one type of PC or player every time. It's much more interesting to have it be limited, obvious, and dramatic, right? To impact the gameplay.
Right. The example here is great. If you have a crystalline creature, you might have it take an action to build up sonic energy in a low thrum. So when it uses a reaction to release a burst of sonic energy when hit, the players can say, oh, I should have seen that coming. One general advice about building creatures here, to get back to the big picture that this guide hits home several times, is that you can't make everything good. Or if you make, or even everything average. When you do, you've usually built an uninteresting creature. Almost no creature has great defenses in all areas. Such creatures are frustrating fights. And then the advice they give us at the beginning is just like, yeah, you got to like vary your creatures. Like maybe it's got a lot of hit points, but low AC, right? Maybe it's got cool abilities, but like weak stats and saves.
Which is great advice. You want your monsters to, like your players, be good at some things, maybe even very good at some things, but they must have weaknesses. And, honestly, I think this is kind of a weakness of 5th edition monster design, because especially once you get to higher levels, many of the monsters are good at everything. They are hard to hit, have many hit points, can cast spells, can also attack for shit tons of damage. Fighting a Rakshasa or a high-level dragon is sometimes exciting, but also it's just like you're just throwing everything you've got at it, because there's no, unlike Smaug, there's no like chink in their armor, right? It's just, you've just gotta overwhelm them with sheer force.
This is a rule that, like, of course, always has an exception, like most things in role-playing games. Like, I don't think dragons should actually have a low AC or something like that. It is cool that they are good at everything, right? Yeah. But for 95, but that's what makes them like special. And if you have a lot of monsters that are good at everything, then it's tough to differentiate. I also noticed, like, when 5th edition came out, they had just a incredibly simplified damage, resistance, and then also weakness system. That was amazing, right? Compared to how complicated it was to keep track of in the past. There are so few monsters that actually have damage weaknesses. It's really disappointing.
It is. It really doesn't come up very often, which is weird, because it is so much simpler than it used to be.
Last thing I'll say about the designing monsters and is in the designing NPC section. It says you can, build it by reskinning a monster or using NPC classes. But one piece of advice is, if you're building a high-level NPC, you could use a PC rules for building it. It works great in Pathfinder. but you don't need to pick every feat and skill feat and all the fiddly bits. Like, get the big stuff in, the couple things that give them cool actions, and then that's it.
The section on building NPCs is great, and like there's a sidebar on both NPCs and monsters called roadmaps, which is just, here's a package of stats and abilities that you can use. And for NPCs, it's, here's an example of how you might build any one of the player classes. For monsters, it's, here's how to build a brute, a skirmisher, a soldier. I love this. I wish that 5th edition had more templates. I know that that's somehow against their design philosophy, but I hate having to either grab an existing monster and modify 100% or start from scratch, because I just, this has always been great about Pathfinders. They give you a package of abilities or a structure to build on, and that's so much easier than the alternative. And I just really appreciate it. I come with ideas and I'm happy to do the work, but it's just like really nice to have the mechanical framework built out so that I know that I'm in the right place.
Yeah. Similarly, the next section, right, for like building things from scratch and or from templates is really cool in that it's building hazards. And one of the fun things I liked about this section, Rob, is like, I feel like you and I, as big fans of Pathfinder 1E, saw this being built in real time.
Yeah.
So hazards, if you don't know, are a catch-all phrase for traps, environmental hazards, or like spiritual traps, haunts, right?
Haunts, yes.
Yeah.
And I remember when they came out, I mean, haunts were a part of, I think, like Rise of the Rune Lords, and then became a much bigger part of the whole Pathfinder system. And this is, again, to constantly praise Paizo and Pathfinder, this is one thing they've really like innovated. This is one of the things that makes it more than just a D&D knockoff, is that their hazards are so much more in depth and interesting and developed than traps are in 5th edition or in D&D in general. So there are traps, but there are also environmental hazards, and like Matt said, there are haunts, and they have
haints, as we would say, haints, as we would say down here in the South.
They have simple and complex, and I love this division. Simple is it does one thing. Complex is it has contingencies, right?
Okay, here's one: spiritual reflection. The reflection in the mirror subtly twists and distorts, its expression taking an unnerving sneer of malice. Like, the contingency is like it can be disabled through religion, by exorcising the spirit, or thievery to quickly cover the mirror.
Yes.
And then there's a bunch of other rules about where it can manifest.
Yeah, these are hazards and traps can be kind of unfun for players, and in 5th edition, there's only one way to deal with them, really, and this is, I think, a mechanical thing that needs to be improved. But in Pathfinder, there's not only like multiple opportunities to deal with them, but multiple approaches as they are designed, and it includes things not just a pit trap, but also mold and hauntings and magical flames, all kinds of things. This is
giant plants, green slime, some of your classics. Here's my 2 big takeaways for all kind of fantasy design from these is, think of traps as not just pit traps or exploding runes, right? Think of them as weird plants and oozes and molds and falling rocks and spiritual hauntings. And then give 2 different skills that could be applied to deal with those, or even better, just something you can do. Like, there's a snowfall. Okay, throw some rocks at it and cause it to fall down. That doesn't require skill. Like, some way to deal with it. And then think about hazards as having, just like creatures have an AC and a hit points, they have a stealth and a disable DCs.
Yep.
Stealth is their DC to notice is something bad here. DC is how easy it is to get rid of it and vary it, right? A trap that's easy to spot but hard to get rid of is interesting.
Yes,
same with a trap that's hard to spot but kind of easy to bypass.
Both are really, really interesting and work in different ways. Yeah, this is, again, the mechanics are going to be hard to translate to other games directly, but the general advice and design instruction for building hazards is so good. It has inspired me to put more interesting, diverse hazards in my games.
Yeah. And speaking of designing things, we have a lot of information on designing magical items, from cursed items, artifacts, which we're familiar with those too, and relics, which are very similar to D&D 5e introduced these in one of the Exandria things. They're
Yes.
artifacts that grow over time.
That grow with your player, which is a neat idea. It feels like a direct crossover from video games, but that's okay. I'm not opposed to it. I mean,
these have been in role-playing games for a long time. I can think of a 3rd edition, like there was Items of Legacy source book that did that. That was kind of fun. So these have been around for a long time.
But these are cool. I like the idea that if you find a cool artifact when you're lower level, that giving it away to level with you or to develop as your player develops. I think that's neat.
2 things I want to mention from this, which is just 2 great pieces of advice. One, there's a great 100 thing table of item quirks that are always fun. And then the basic advice is err on the side of fewer, more impressive activations and bonuses for your item, right? Less things, but more cooler. It will make your item stick around longer and easier for players to grok and get what it does.
Yeah, we've Matt and I love tables. We've talked about this on many of our pods. We love tables, and there are a lot of great tables in this book. And I love this table of item quirks. It's incredible. Like 43 wet and its user are always damp.
Just a sweaty guy.
It's just a sweaty item. It's just a wet, sweaty item. Yeah, we don't have to go into a ton of detail on these items, but there's just like great advice for how to approach item design. Pathfinder 2e, its itemization is much, much better than 5th edition's. It's got a lot more mechanics behind how much things cost and how to buy them and how to create them. This is one area where it's like a clear, like, distinct winner, and I wish that 5th edition would make an adjustment, because I am constantly stressed out trying to figure out what to do with 5th edition magic items and equipment.
There are also, again, a set of rules of 3 bad things. Just we had our hazards. They don't have a catch-all name, but they are afflictions. Oh, sorry, the afflictions is the name. Curses, diseases, and drugs.
I love this affliction section.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Afflictions. Yeah, I like these. Yeah.
Before we get to the affliction,
sure.
Nothing to say here. I love their again, speaking of tables, their gems and art objects.
Oh,
there's like a huge list of, if you want to vary your like treasure and not just say you got 1,000 gold pieces, there's all these cool like gems and art objects. But yeah, sorry, the afflictions, Matt, what were you going to say?
Oh, it's just, if you want to, I really like expanding the, D&D has long had these kind of magical diseases in it, but if you want to like just expand those rules a little bit to like the idea of more interesting curses, right? Very fantasy thing to have happen to your players or an NPC, right? These are great. Pathfinder's also always had a lot of drugs in it, so
yeah, there's really good rules for drugs. Matt's right. The afflictions, so there's curses and there's diseases, and there's a lot of really cool rules for both here, and a lot of like really good variants, different types of curses, different types of diseases, and then drugs if you want them.
And then we're on to our last set of tools, which is all about world building for your campaign. And starting small, it goes with settlements, nations, and planes, along with some basic questions that we've got in basically every Dungeon Master guide we've looked at. What do you want to think about for the history of your world, your pantheon, your cosmology? These are I don't know, nothing here like blew me away as to like helping my world building. Pathfinder has some really great kind of templates to quickly record the basic information of a place, but they're very similar to what we had in like 3rd and 4th editions. So
yeah, nothing here is groundbreaking. It's useful. I liked being able to follow these guides. There was one thing that I really liked that was kind of eye-opening for me, that was really I hadn't thought about, and that's at the very beginning, which talks about design approach and the difference between top down and bottom up. And it describes top down as when you have a lot of time and you you focus on the big picture. You start with like the multiverse, you chronicle like 1,000 years or more of history. You got to map nations and trade routes. And then bottom up is, well, maybe you start with like a city and then work out from there. And what I've realized is that I have really moved toward bottom up design in recent years, not because I don't love to map out every single nation and pantheon and decide trade routes between nations, but just because my players tend to take campaigns in directions that I don't expect. And so I like to build usually a city and sketch out, what I think the world is doing, but leave it a lot more loose and less prescribed so that I can make changes later. And I hadn't really thought about it in the bottom up and top down way before. So I thought this was a really, really interesting way of thinking about it.
Well, at the risk of repeating myself from our first world building episode, the bottom up approach is best if you want to start playing the game soon.
That's right. That's
all I gotta say.
It was a good point, right? If you want to spend a lot of time world building, do a top down approach.
It's fun. Do it. But if you want to start playing,
one thing that I do like that I really like about Pathfinder, and that I want to borrow for all of my games, is how they approach settlements. Settlements have stats and levels and all these things, and you can ignore some of this, but it really helps. I really liked the sort of list of things that you should think about when you're putting your settlement together. You don't have to follow all of it, but things like, what are the power structures? Who are the NPCs? What are the religions? What are the threats? What are the markets? How many people live there? All, basic things, but I appreciated having just a stat block list to refer to of things to think about, because again, I am always finding that my players are asking questions that I don't have answers to about what's going on in my settlement. And so having a list of, here's some things that you have answers to, or you might want to have answers to, is very, very helpful.
Right. And I think the real innovation here is making sure that threats are always kind of listed. You know, in Pathfinder 1 edition, they would have a very similar block for various places you could go to, but they wouldn't list the threats. And the threats immediately let you know, what can my players do here? What are people here interested in accomplishing? So if we're in my hometown, Houston, threats much more frequent, mass flooding. If it's Rob's hometown, large pockets of upper middle class unvaccinated people.
That's right.
Which you got to watch out for.
The looming threat of a gigantic world-ending earthquake. Lots of roving Antifa hordes, that kind of thing. All right, so there's a lot good there. We got a little bit of time left. Let's talk about what I'm assuming are probably our least favorite sections with the remaining 10 minutes, which is subsystems and variant rules.
Now, so there's subsystems in Pathfinder for things like influence, chases, reputation, victory points as just kind of a generic one, and ways you can kind of set up for your players to earn these points for you to kind of track whether players are winning or not. Now, Rob and I both really liked the clock mechanic in Blaze in the Dark or in Apocalypse World games. These are the same thing. It's just they are so much more fiddly, right? There's a lot more things, and whereas a clock is like something you scribble on a sticky note, these often feel like something you might need to build a spreadsheet for.
Yeah. My main takeaway on these is that they're all things that I like and would be interested in including in my game. I especially like the research rules. This was in one adventure that I read, and I've already forgotten in which one, but I liked it in theory. But in truth, in practice, if any of these subsystems were any good, they would be part of the core game. That's my main take on subsystems. If
they thought them out well enough, we would have put a chapter on clocks.
Exactly. They would be part of the game. So I'm not sort of opposed to the idea. And there is one subsystem that Pathfinder's come up with, which I really, really like. And that's the one that they used for Kingmaker, which was basically just like a nation building settlement point resource. I don't know. It was like a strategy game slapped on top of your hex crawl. And it wasn't perfect, but I liked it. I thought it worked pretty well. But what did Skull and Shackles have? Skull and Shackles had
I mean, you just had a ship. You didn't have
a ship.
No, you had infamy points.
It was infamy, which was like reputation.
Points. Yeah.
Anyway, they're always adding subsystems, and they're fine. It's they're fine.
I think this is a weakness here. I've seen them done better. Like, for example, the chase subsystem. Like, remember when we reviewed Savage Worlds? Like, just laying out playing cards and stuff like that?
Yes.
That works so well just because it's so easy to track and will not take you more than 15 minutes to play out.
This is a side, but I have been playing in a Savage Worlds game, and like in my first combat, when we drew cards and then drew them again, I was like, oh, this is so much better. This is such a better initiative system than anything D&D related. Like, I'm sorry, it sucks. I hate D&D initiative. I forgot how nice it was. But chases are a good example because they just like work better in other systems, and trying to create a chase system. We should talk about this. We got a request on our Discord to talk about chases. I don't know that I have a good answer, but we should review and come up with some ideas and talk about it, because chases are a thing that's good and we should that you want to include, but the chase subsystem here is fine. It's not great. Right. And the rules that are in 5th edition are also, well, I'm not sure they're even fine. They're just, they're there.
We'll bookmark these for a future chase episode in which we can maybe compare various chase systems and come up with, a couple happy mediums for light and heavy amounts of rules. Yeah. Chases. There's also, rules for hex crawls and building vehicles. But then we get to a lot of variant rules for Pathfinder 2. And it's one of those things when I think here's my approach to variant rules is I like reading through them when I'm not playing the game and want to, burn my precious time on this good green earth away. But, are they always useful? Nah, usually not. I love variant rules in Dungeon Master guides.
They're interesting to think about. They're real, I don't know, they're like historical counterfactuals. They're fun what ifs, and they're just like not to me in any way relevant to anything. I would never use any of these.
Okay, here's a couple I want to highlight. First off, and this is one that, I think we've all encountered, which is alternative scores. I'm going to quote right here from this. The classic ability scores aren't of equal value in the rules. Thank you, Pathfinder, for just admitting that.
Thank you. Yeah, for just coming out and saying it.
Yeah. Dexterity, Constitution, and Wisdom tend to be more important unless a character requires a particular ability score. Like, this is true for, like, Dungeons & Dragons, except for 4th edition since 3rd edition. So, here's the suggestions. Make the following changes. Strength does everything that Strength and Constitution do. Dexterity is split in 2. And Charisma applies to will saves. Everything else is unchanged.
Again,
that would fix it.
That would help, and I like the idea of charisma being linked to will saves. But when I was reading this, I was like, you got to redesign the whole thing. You can't just slap some fixes on the existing ability score model, which is garbo. It's just bad. It's one of the legacies of D&D that I wish we could do away with, because the way that it works is just not good. But yeah, it's a good idea, but it just
listen, if the ability scores were strength, dexterity, agility, charisma applying to will saves, wisdom, and intelligence, that I think that would be better. Obviously,
I do think
it's
that
never going to happen, and is it worth changing at your table? No. But
no.
It does make it would balance them out. A couple other interesting things is there's a great deep background system. It's
Oh, yeah, I
kind
did
of
like
like
this
the
one, actually, yeah.
Xanathar's life of, or mini role-playing games that have life event tables.
Yep.
So if you want to help players build really, really deep backgrounds, it's awesome. And on the reverse side, there are some really good basic rules for starting as players without classes. Level 0
Level
players.
0, that's right.
And
This is a thing that I have run and played before. It's silly, but also it's kind of fun. It feels very rewarding when you when your level zero character survives, and then you get to pick a character class. It's very hardcore. It's not for beginners, but I think it's a lot of fun for experienced players to start as like commoners or whatever and try to become adventurers.
I think it might work well for beginner players in that it teaches them to not play the game by looking at their character sheets, but by trying to, if you want a certain type of play, you can do, these are great for kind of the grinder approach where the funnel approach where you.
The grinder. I love a grinder.
Yeah. I also like there's the option of instead of just level 0 with nothing, you can do level 0 where everyone gets like something. Like your apprentice wizard, one spell, right? Your apprentice fighter, you don't have armor yet, but you have a single weapon that you can use. That kind of, that might be a nice, if you're afraid to go full level 0.
Full commoner, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that too.
There's some other more fiddly rules. There's a huge set of advice for running Gestalt or dual class PCs, which I'm always a fan of. And then we get to a giant NPC gallery, which is basically like a bestiary for humanoids here.
Which rules, and
great art on this.
I wish 5th edition had one. There's a bunch of really cool, both they're not just chunks of stat blocks. They have personalities and how they fit in your campaign, and there's art and other details. This is a very rich text. The Game Mastery Guide has a lot going on and a lot included in it.
Looking at some Pathfinder stuff, it makes me realize some of the most useful but maybe not well selling books that 5th edition in its current approach has left out. Rob, would you immediately buy if 5th edition released, if you were running a 5th edition game, a 200-page book of named and statted NPCs?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I was just thinking about that. If they put out an NPC book, I would buy that way faster than another adventure, which I'm already fine, I guess. But yeah, if they put out an NPC book, I would buy that right away, which is, sorry to be cynical, but I know why they don't do that, because they don't care about
the only people
their
who
DMs.
buy it are going to be dungeon masters like us who don't run published adventures. And it would make the game better, but would it sell a lot? Probably not.
Probably not.
There's a great index. Yeah. And that's it. That's the Game Mastery Guide.
If you're at all interested in 2nd edition, or you just got some walking around money and want to read something interesting, I strongly recommend this book. I had a lot of fun reading it. It's really, really good it's mostly useful if you're running a tactical Dungeons and Dragons type game, but it's just really good game mastery advice. It's really, really good. It's really got a lot of really good design advice. Matt, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
And listeners, let me ask you something. We've talked a lot about 2nd edition, and Matt and I, for obvious reasons, do a lot of 5th edition stuff. Would you be interested? Do you think we should do maybe a little one-shot adventure in 2E? Do you think that we should give a little Pathfinder to the people to change of pace? Listeners, let us know if you think this would be of interest to you, because I can see, I've run it before and I really like 2nd edition, and if what's stopping you or someone else from running a campaign is the barrier to entry, we could put together one of our patented one-shots that's not a one-shot and introductory type adventure. I don't know. That might be interesting. Let me know if you let us know. Write in if you think that's something that you would use, and we'll put it on the tentative maybe table.
I mean, what I have often thought is okay, 2nd edition is so sleekly designed, and every stat block is Pathfinder is so precise in its language, and if you fuck something up in your design, you maybe made something impossible for someone else to use, right?
True.
But now that I've read this game mastery guide, man, I feel much better about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I maybe said this last time. I think the floor is higher, right? Like the barrier to entry is a little bit higher with Pathfinder, but once you get there, I think that it works really well. What we could also do is we could also convert something that we already did into Pathfinder. That might be even easier.
And lazier.
And much lazier. All right, listeners. Well, I floated the idea. Let us know if you think that's a good one.
And you can send that idea or any other Dungeon Master questions you have to dmofnone@gmail.com or add us on Twitter @dmofnone.
For as long as it exists. Also, if you want to get our attention, maybe, you can join our Discord or find us on Patreon at patreon.com/dungeonmasterofnone. I hope you found this instructive. I really enjoyed reading and talking about this Pathfinder Game Mastery Guide. Paizo does great work. Does Union Shop. We love them. Great people over there. Final thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, play some Pathfinder and let us know what you think. There's a billion published Pathfinder adventures, so have fun.
They're all great. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Stay healthy, stay safe, and keep rolling them dice.
You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you neither